I had a completely different intro for this video, but I talked so much about the ASUS ROG Ally X, my thoughts, and everything that's just swirling around about it that I just wanted to go ahead and record this and give you a forewarning. This is a long video. We're going to be talking about the benchmarks. We're going to be talking about the ergonomics, my experience with it, and how I finally got to the numbers that I got, because they're very different than a lot of the other numbers that you're going to find online. And there's a very valid reason why. Grab yourself a drink, grab yourself something to eat, because it's going to be a fun ride. Okay, this is going to be a little weird because in front of me, I have two ASUS ROG Ally X units. I have the production sample, that's the one with the yellow sticker. This was sent to a ton of tech tubers and reviewers, as well as journalists for tech magazines and news outlets and so on and so forth. And then there is the production unit. That's the one with the gray sticker that's here. This is what you will find at the store. If you were to buy this at Best Buy or Amazon or wherever, this is what you will find in the display, and this is what will be the final product. Here's the crazy thing about all of this. This unit, the one with the gray sticker, performs worse than this unit, the one with the yellow sticker. So I was kind of taken aback, because when I went to ASUS's headquarters in June, I got my hands on the ASUS ROG Ally X, and I was blown away by not only the ergonomics and performance, but overall the heat dissipation that was there and the feel of the handheld as a whole. So when I left Taiwan and I went back home, I was eagerly excited. I was eagerly waiting for a sample unit to finally arrive. And when it finally got there a few weeks ago, I unboxed it, started playing games on there, and that's why I published a video talking about the ASUS ROG Ally X and my impressions. Obviously, I couldn't share benchmarks or anything like that, which I'll share later on in this video. But when I got the sample unit, this guy, the actual production unit that's here, the one with the gray sticker, I was ridiculously excited. I unboxed it immediately because I wanted to go ahead and start running benchmarks and providing numbers for you guys in terms of what I saw in terms of performance and the overall experience of gaming on this handheld. But immediately after unboxing, I tried to turn on this unit and it wouldn't turn on at all. I tried everything. I even read the instruction manual just to see what I was doing wrong, and I couldn't for the life of me figure it out. So I contacted my rep over at ASUS, and he went ahead and said, hey, try this and that, blah, 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 all of things that I had already tried. And what finally worked is holding down the power button and inserting the AC adapter. Voila, it turned on. So I updated all of the drivers, updated the BIOS, updated Armoury Crate, and started downloading some games. But the first thing that I booted up, Elden Ring, I noticed immediately that there was such a huge performance difference, so much so that I thought I was on the wrong power profile. So I started, just gaming, trying things out and just seeing what was there, but I couldn't help but feel that the performance was worse. So I shut it down, got the sample unit, and I started gaming on that, and lo and behold, there was a huge difference in terms of performance. So I reached out again to the ASUS team and I said, hey guys, I'm noticing a difference here. I don't know what's going on. The same power profile is being used on both handhelds. Same settings are there on the AMD software. I just don't know what's going on. So I ran some benchmarks and I shared some numbers with them. And they're like, yeah, something's not right on this unit, but go ahead and do the review anyways. We'll go ahead and see what happens. So there you have it. This is in part why it's taken so long to actually get this video review out, because the time that I had put aside to actually benchmark this handheld was spent troubleshooting and trying to figure out why this wasn't performing like the sample was. Now, ASUS, they did say that they'll be sending me a third ASUS ROG Ally X, and they want me to return this production unit because they want to send it to the engineers to figure out what the heck is going on. Maybe I just got a bad apple. Maybe this is a 1 in a million chance, and it just happened to be that the performance is worse. So I asked them, I said, hey, is it all right if I share the performance between the two? Because the performance is just there. And I don't want to say that the ASUS ROG Ally X is a bad handheld, because this production unit that's here, this unit that I have in terms of testing and everything, is performing worse than the ASUS ROG Ally, the original, in some instances. And it's crazy to me because this is such a freaking good handheld. There are so many things that have changed. And when I started, just gaming on the ASUS ROG Ally, I was kind of taken aback because I initially thought that, it's just a larger battery and a slight performance boost in terms of that RAM and that faster RAM that's there. But the overall culmination of all of the slight minute changes that are there this is essentially what the Steam Deck OLED was to the Steam Deck LCD. It's an overall improvement and refinement in so many instances that the culmination of all these changes makes it even better in some instances than the Steam Deck OLED was to the Steam Deck LCD. This is the thing that I want to go ahead and share with you guys, because to me, yes, the numbers are going to be shown. I'm going to share them and they're going to be there, but I still genuinely think that the ASUS ROG Ally X is going to be the best Windows-based handheld for quite some time, at least until hopefully we got, AMD Strix finally on these handhelds, but that's a whole different conversation entirely. Now, that being said, when I do get my hands on the next production unit the ASUS is going to send me, I will go ahead and run these benchmarks once again so that I can find out whether or not there really was a huge difference. But since I can't share the numbers for the sample, you just got to take my word on it. Like, it's just so much better than the numbers that are here that it's kind of almost criminal to share these with you. And, it's unfair. I genuinely think that this handheld is really good. It sucks. When I finally got my hands on the ASUS ROG Ally X sample unit, I was blown away by the overall ergonomics and feel of things. Now, obviously, I don't really have a place to put my pinkies, and I've kind of just gotten used to it, and I don't even really think too much about it. But one thing that I did notice is that the right analog stick is actually closer to the screen than it was on the original Ally, and this definitely makes it more common for me to accidentally touch the screen when I'm pushing left on the right analog stick, which means that if I'm playing a game like Baldur's Gate, for instance, it's going to completely change the UI. And sometimes it takes a second or two, depending on the TDP that you have it on, to do that, which completely breaks the immersion and overall flow of the game that you would be in. Now, obviously, you can turn this off if you go into the device manager. You can turn off the touchscreen and disable the drivers that are there, but it would be nice to have that option in the command center just so that it's easier to use, especially for the casual user that doesn't know anything about accessing device managers and turning off different drivers and things like that. But it is definitely something that should be worth noting. Now, when it comes to the analog sticks that are here, guys, this feels so much tighter than it did on the original Ally. The Ally just feels very loose in contrast. Now, I do know that these come with potentiometer joysticks that are here, and GullyHit is going to be releasing Hall sensing joysticks that are here. So if you want to swap them out, you can do so accordingly. There is a ribbon that's in the back of this unit that you kind of have to take into account if you are going to remove the shell and kind of change things in and out, because there is a 2280 SSD that's in here that you can swap out if you want to. But overall, it really just depends on what it is that you want to do. But the analog sticks are pretty well on here. The D-pad on this is so much better than the original D-pad on the original Ally. The Ally, this kind of felt like a cheap Wish.com knockoff of the D-pad that was found on the Series X controllers, like for the Xbox controllers. This feels more like a Sega Saturn controller, which is fine. Personally, the best controllers that I've seen, or the best D-pads that I've seen on anything in modern hardware, are the D-pads that are found on 8-bit Duke controllers. Those are by far some of the best that I've seen. Now, overall, it feels great. The triggers feel awesome. I will say that the shoulder buttons that are here on my actual production unit one's louder than the other one, which is just weird, but it is what it is, I guess. I don't know. Overall, I think that this is just a dud when it comes down to it, but I'm still going to show performance numbers and things like that. One very, very crucial thing that I think a lot of people might sleep over is the improvement in terms of thermals. While I was gaming on this, if I was not plugged in, when you're plugged in, you're going to feel the battery on the bottom that's going to be charging, because it's just going to be gathering energy and it's going to get hot. But while I was gaming on this, no matter what profile I was on, this thing rarely got hot unless you were actually here touching the top where the vents are at. Speaking of which, the vents that are here, there's that micro SD card slot that's there. I haven't ran into any issues in terms of running games from there, transferring data to and from. It just works. So I think whatever problems they had with the original ROG Ally, they fixed on the Ally X, which is nice. But aside from that, everything just feels really, really comfortable. I do like the fact that the macro keys that are here, the M1 and the M2 key, is moved a little bit inside, because that means that I'm not going to accidentally touch it. And all I have to do is kind of just like reach over a little bit. Now, technically, you could go ahead and hold it like this, and you'd have this right here ready to go. But I guess I just have long fingers, and I just hold this like this to begin with. I do like the fact that the touchscreen is cooler than the original. Now, this isn't something that I use personally, but my wife plays Palia a lot, or Palia, I don't know how it's pronounced. But when she plays it, sometimes she has to touch the screen because it's not 100% optimized for controller input. And whenever she had to do that on the original Ally, she would complain that it was just really hot to the touch, and it was just a hot device overall. Now with this, you don't really have to worry about it. I know that 6 degrees Celsius doesn't seem like much, but it's enough to make an impact when you're actually gaming on this handheld and experiencing it firsthand. I do want to mention that the face buttons have a little tiny bit more travel distance than they did on the original Ally, but it still feels nice. They're definitely a little clickier and they feel sturdier than they did, as in there isn't any sort of movement when you push down on the face button in contrast to the Ally. So the Ally X just feels like a better overall built experience in contrast to the Ally. When comparing the Ally to the Ally X, yes, you are going to have some things that overlap between the two, but there are enough differentiating factors between the two of them to point towards the Ally X being the better out of the two. And yeah, you're still going to be getting that same Z1 Extreme chipset, as well as that same 7-inch IPS LCD display, but you are going to be getting faster RAM. Not only faster, but more RAM. Instead of 16 gigabytes, you're going to be getting 24 gigabytes of LPDDR5X RAM clocked at 7,500 mega transfers. Initially, I didn't think that was going to be a huge difference in gaming between the two, but it definitely impacted my experience while gaming on this handheld. I also want to go ahead and mention that the main difference aside from that, in terms of specs, would be the size of the battery. Now, I thought that double the battery meant that it was going to be double the battery life, but that's definitely far from the truth. I initially thought that 40 watt hours to 80 watt hours would be, kind of like playing 1 hour of Baldur's Gate 3 on the Ally would equate to 2 hours on the Ally X. But that's definitely not what I got. I got around 2.5, almost 3 hours on Baldur's Gate 3 on this Ally X without even thinking much about it. I was impressed with this handheld. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about battery life later on in the video, but it's definitely worth mentioning that the superior model, not only in terms of efficiency and speed, but also battery life, would be the Ally X out of the two of them. And that's something that's not shown on paper right straight from the get-go. When it comes to Armoury Crate, it's pretty similar to what I saw in my impressions video. And if you haven't seen that, I'll just go ahead and do a quick tour on things. So right here, you have all of the games that are listed, and these are all the games that are installed. Now, the way the Armoury Crate is set up, you can customize the look and feel. So if you prefer that vertical look, kind of like the original Armoury Crate on the original Ally, then you can do so, but I prefer this horizontal look. And I also like the different options that are here for adjusting that overall look. Now, if you do want to go ahead and change specific things for on a game by game basis, then you can set a game profile for all of the button mapping that is available. And of course, if you look at game info, there are different things that you can adjust here for the look of the game in Armoury Crate. You can download all of your game platforms that are here. Now with Steam, it would just download it automatically from their web servers, but some of these other ones, it'll either open up a Edge browser, I was going to say Chrome and Edge browser, and just from there it'll go ahead and download whatever is available. All you have to do is just accept it or click it. When it came to the Xbox app, you had to go to the Microsoft Store, but that's pretty much it. Now, if you didn't know, I do like the fact that the update center is here, so you can just go in, check for updates, and download any updates that are here. It's pretty convenient because that way you don't have to go into the My ASUS app to download anything anymore, and it's just nicer overall. The calibration is pretty straightforward. Everything is there, and you can just calibrate the different things that are there. And if by any chance your joysticks do get uncalibrated or decalibrated, then you can go ahead and recalibrate them there. Now, when it comes to performance, obviously, you have your Windows layout, and then you have Silent Performance Turbo, but there's this manual option that's here, and I personally like it because if you do run into games where you just don't need that much power, then you can do so. I could even, toss these down and kind of just get these even lower if I needed to, or if I wanted to, just because I'm not going to need power for games like Hollow Knight, for instance, or Celeste. They don't really need that much power to begin with, so it's very, very easy to just go ahead and get things going. There is an Eco Assist mode that's here to change different things that are here, and there are GPU settings that are here. For the most part, I don't really care too much about these because there are just not that many games that support AM/FM, and RSR is just something that I don't really use to begin with.
So it really just depends on what it is that you are going to be looking for your own unique experience. On this side over here, you're going to have the ability to adjust your command center, and this is pretty much how I have it laid out. Now, when it comes down to it, I like to have everything accessible that is pretty much straightforward in terms of power. Game profiles, I don't really adjust too much, but when it comes to the CPU boost, this is something that you should probably turn off when you're playing some of those lightweight games. Even emulating lightweight titles, you're not going to need the CPU boost, and it's just going to direct so much power into the CPU that it's just, there's no need for it. You're going to get the same performance that you would get, for example, if you were playing Celeste or Hollow Knight than you would without it. And it's just going to consume much less juice when you have the CPU boost turned off. So this is something that, is there just to kind of keep things going. Now, if you look over here, there are different ways to capture screenshots or video if you want to, and then there's the support column that's there. If you want to go ahead and capture footage or screenshots, all you got to do is hit the macro key that's over here in A, and then from there you'll be able to capture a screenshot. If you hit the macro key and Y, it'll start recording the process, and there's a whole slew of ways of actually adjusting all of that. Once everything's said and done, though, everything is right here in the command center by pushing this button. The cool thing that I like about it is that if you were to swap different things, it typically remembers settings that are there for the different profiles that are there. So it's nice and convenient to be able to, kind of have that. So if you typically play on like silent or performance mode in bed and you don't want to, disturb your significant other, then you can have that and set up with a lower brightness for the screen, which is pretty nice overall. But it really just is a nice experience to just have all of this in one complete package. I do wish that there were a few more things that were here to just give all of the options that are available through Windows via Armoury Crate. The reason why is that if you're going to have a front end like this, you want to be able to provide as many options as possible for the user to adjust everything that's needed. Now, obviously, most people that, don't want to go into the settings and don't want to tweak things, they can just go to the operation mode and just switch things to and from. But if you have someone that is a power user and kind of just wants to tweak things to perfection, I would like to have as many options as possible. And there are just some things that aren't there. We can't talk about the Ally X without talking about the performance that you can expect while playing video games on this handheld. Now, obviously, this is a very dependent situation. This is dependent on the type of experience that you want. This is dependent on the types of games that you're going to play and the experience that you want from them. Obviously, I can play Elden Ring and I can expect 30 frames per second at a specific resolution and a specific TDP, but if I want to have a better, smoother experience, I can increase that TDP and decrease the resolution and get more frames. Again, this is very dependent on the experience that you want, and this is honestly the beauty of this handheld, is that it makes it very easy to toggle from one aspect to another, especially with the use of Armoury Crate and the command center that is easily accessible. Now, with all of the games that I tested, I do want to let you know that they are all at 1080 and they are all on low profiles or low settings or low presets that are within the game, except for Cyberpunk 2077, which is the Steam Deck preset, and No Rest for the Wicked is set to the favorable performance side. So this is really just dependent on what it is that you want. Now, when you're looking at the ASUS ROG Ally X 13-watt performance, I was actually really surprised with what I saw with Starfield. I mean, at the silent mode, I really wasn't expecting any AAA title to hit 30 frames per second, but with this hitting 30 frames at 1080, I was really surprised. I also do want to go ahead and mention, while we're getting into this, that if you were to decrease the resolution from 1080 to 720, most games on here, you will see a 15 to 20% increase in frames. Again, this is most games. It really just depends on the games and how well the drivers are and whether this is CPU favorable or GPU favorable on this handheld. Again, it really just depends. Something that bears mentioning is that if you are going to play games at that 13-watt TDP, you might experience some sound crackling from the speakers if you're playing AAA titles that are heavy-hitting like Cyberpunk 2077 or Baldur's Gate 3. Now, this has nothing to do with actual wattage or anything like that, but just the fact that there aren't enough resources to go to that Dolby Atmos experience that you get from the speakers. If you're not familiar with that, Dolby Atmos, essentially what it is that it provides this faux 3D effect from the two speakers in the front. And it's actually really cool when it works. I didn't experience any sort of sound crackling at the 17-watt performance mode or the 25-watt or 30 watt mode for the turbo mode. So my assumption is that there's just aren't enough resources to go to that. If you want to, you can turn that off in Windows settings. And in the past, on the original ROG Ally, I did experience some issues with that, but it was patched out in a later update. My assumption is that with the Ally X, you'll see that as well. I will also say that at 13 watts and even lower, 10 or 9 watts, I didn't experience that while playing 2D titles or pixel titles. So my assumption is that that's just something that's there dependent on the games that you're playing, and there just aren't enough resources to go to that. Now, when you're looking at the other titles that are here, it's not surprising that none of them really hit that 30 FPS average benchmark. But when you toggle on the performance mode at 17 watts, a lot of these titles tend to perform even better. Starfield, for instance, saw an average of 57.2 frames per second. No Rest for the Wicked, which is a green light or early access mess right now, in my opinion, is 35.5 frames, and Cyberpunk 2077 hit 37.1 on average. Baldur's Gate 3 is 23.4, which I kind of expected going into this because Baldur's Gate 3 is a little bit of a heavier title. Elden Ring is at 37.3 frames per second. And at those mid 30s to early 40 FPS with the VRR on the screen, you're pretty much set and golden. Keep in mind that you can play games on the Ally X at a 25 watt TDP longer than you could play games on the original Ally at a 15 watt TDP. And this is thanks to the overall efficiency that is built into the Ally X. That means that you're going to have a better experience for a longer period of time on the Ally X than you would on the original Ally. Now, when you're looking at the 25 watt TDP or the turbo mode, this is where things really start to flourish. Now, with Starfield looking at 60.3 frames, I mean, it's just buttery smooth. You never have to worry too much about things unless you're going to be going to New Atlantis. That's really where you're going to see the closer to 40 to 30 frames per second. But aside from that, everything runs relatively well. No Rest for the Wicked, despite it being in the state that it's in, is still hitting 35 frames per second. Now, Cyberpunk is really, truly where things start to go ahead and shine, as well as Elden Ring. This is really, really beautiful. Simply, again, because of that VRR that's there, things start to look better than they were before. Baldur's Gate 3 is hitting 37.6 frames per second, and that's really, truly where things kind of go ahead and get really, really interesting. Now, at the 30 watt TDP or the turbo mode, this is where things start to get really interesting because we get to really, truly see what this handheld can do with as much juice as it can drink and not really have to worry about things. And again, this is within the confines of what ASUS has provided in the Armoury Crate. You can technically go past this limit that's here if you wanted to. Again, this is up to you. It's your hardware. If you want to overclock it, you're more than welcome to. Starfield running at almost 60 frames per second is absolutely gorgeous. I was kind of amazed at how well that ran. Again, Cyberpunk 2077, Baldur's Gate 3, and Elden Ring all running close to that 40 FPS, 50 FPS mark with VRR means that things are just going to look smooth. You don't really have to worry too much about things. With No Rest for the Wicked, with that 1% lows, like it just, you can tell that this is a green light or an early access game. But aside from that, everything looks absolutely immaculate and absolutely beautiful. Now, I talked about power profiles and battery life early on in the video, but I want to get a little tiny bit deeper in this. Again, this is very dependent on the types of games that you're going to be playing and the operating mode or TDP that you're going to be having, the power profiles that are built into Armoury Crate and the command center that's there. If you're going to be going for 25 watts, you can technically go for around 2 hours and 15 minutes to about 2.5 hours. And that's like full on mode. Like you're not even worrying about anything. It's honestly kind of amazing. The worst performance that I got was around 1 hour and 55 minutes, but that was an outlier. Everything else that I played in terms of AAA titles on this handheld, it just worked. It was kind of surprising, honestly. At 17 watts, you're looking at about 2 hours and 45 minutes to 3 hours and 15 minutes. Again, this is very dependent on the games that you're playing and how much power it's actually consuming. At 13 watts, you're looking at around 5 hours, guys. I didn't really truly believe it until I actually did the math and looked at everything. If you are playing something that just needs 13 watts, nothing crazy, nothing super crazy at all whatsoever, and you have it at 60 hertz, you might get anywhere between 4, maybe 5 hours easily. And if you have it at a custom TDP like I did for Hollow Knight at 10 watts, you're looking at anywhere between 7 and 8 hours. It's honestly truly astonishing how much you can push this battery and how much game time you have. I was kind of blown away, and like, it's just crazy to me because even when you're looking at like the Steam Deck, for instance, and you're playing something super light like Balatro, for instance, which I've been playing a lot of lately, you're talking about 8, 9, 10 hours on that handheld. If you have something like the ROG Ally X and you have a low TDP that doesn't really need that much power and you're getting 30 frames per second on Balatro, you're probably going to get even more time than that. And that's the crazy thing about it, is that if you're able to tweak things and get things exactly as you like, you're pretty much set. You don't have to really worry about anything. So it's pretty awesome that this 80 watt hour battery is able to last as much as it does. All right, let's get real. Should you get the ROG Ally X? Well, it really just depends on a couple of different scenarios. I'm going to look at it from two different perspectives. I'm going to look at it from the perspective of somebody that is getting a PC handheld and doesn't have one, and someone that has the ROG Ally X or even the Steam Deck or the Legion Go. So if you're looking for a PC handheld right now, you don't have one. If you're looking for the best one, we're talking about performance-wise, battery life, and you could probably say ergonomics as well. This is the best handheld, without a doubt. And for me, when I look at a handheld, I feel like the performance to battery consumption or battery life is probably the most important thing. Ergonomics are obviously important as well. I prefer to have curves over a flat back like the original Ally, but when it comes down to it, the ROG Ally X just performs better on all of those things. It ticks a lot of marks. The only thing that I don't really like about it is the price point. $800 is a lot. It's a large ask, especially for somebody that can find an ROG Ally for $650 MSRP. You might be able to get it for $600 or $550 over at Best Buy. Really depends on what it is that you're looking for. Now, if you are an ROG Ally owner, or you have a Legion Go, or you have a Steam Deck, it's really much more difficult to say whether or not this is something that you should get, because those three handhelds, as of right now, are fine. They're good. They're honestly some of the best out there. But if you ever run into battery FOMO, for instance, if you're afraid of the battery running out on your original Ally and you want to go ahead and not have to worry about that, the ROG Ally X might be a good option for you. In terms of performance, they're relatively similar, but there are some benefits that you get in terms of faster RAM and, well, pretty much being able to sip more juice or use more electricity on the chipset. You can have higher clock speeds and pretty much just run games better overall and not have to worry about that battery in the long run. So there are some perks when it comes down to it, but if you're satisfied with the ROG Ally and you typically play plugged in to a wall charger or an adapter, then you don't really have to worry about it. You could honestly probably wait for the ROG Ally 2 and you'd be okay. You could go ahead and get that next chipset that's going to come out. We all know that AMD is working on something else that will be put into these handhelds, and well, they'll run more efficient. So it really just depends on what it is that you're looking for. For me, if I had to choose between the ROG Ally and the ROG Ally X, I would go with the Ally X for several reasons. Obviously, you're going to get better performance and efficiency, but that battery life on a handheld is just so freaking good. And the games, they run so well on there that it's kind of hard. It's just hard to really recommend anything else right now when this is sitting there and it's brand new, shiny, and has top of the line specs. So what do you guys think of the ROG Ally X? Is this something that you're going to be picking up for yourself, or are you just going to go ahead and wait until the ROG Ally 2 comes out? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on things. And if you want to hear my thoughts on the ROG Ally after having it for quite some time, then click this video over here. And if you want to hear my thoughts on the Steam Deck OLED and why it's probably the best option for most people, then click this video over here. And until next time, guys, I will see you on the next one. Peace.